Alright, so this is going to be my first video using the new camera and microphone setup. The problem I'm having right now is that the base I've got is super tiny, so any adjustment to the camera angle makes it tip over. The only thing it likes is straight vertical, and it's not going to be good enough to get my face while I do this. So I just had to tape the base onto my container of earplugs. But let's get started. Now, I will be getting a tripod tomorrow, but this video will go out before the tripod gets here. The first video of the day usually goes out about 7:15 in the morning, and I'm guaranteed that the tripod will not be here until closer to 11, and I gotta do this video. So this is for my followers who like to write or who are thinking about writing, and this tutorial is how to write your first short story. If you've been thinking about writing fiction, writing a short story, or writing something longer like a novel, like what I've been working on for months, you can do it, but you may have a lot of questions on how do you do it. And I've read a lot of advice that just isn't terribly helpful. I mean, I really love it when established writers are like, you get somebody who's like, so I really want to write my first fiction story. How do I do it? And the writers and the established author is like, well, just sit down, grab a pen, and start writing. That's real helpful. I mean, that's essentially what you do, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking, how do you start? How do you even begin? How do you even begin to put a story together? How do you put a story together so that you get this many pages? How do you do it? How do you get from where you are to this? Third book in the Avia series. If you want to see the first book, I got all of them here. How do you get from where you are to this right here? Avia 1. Here's Avia 2. Avia 2. We got Avia 3. Get it. Avia 3. And Avia 4. This is my crime book series. I've only ever done one crime book series, and this is it. Might do more in the future, but I don't know. So how do you get, from your idea to this, and then eventually this? How do you get there? That's what they're asking. They're not asking, how do I pick up a pen and write something? Dude, didn't you learn that in kindergarten? I mean, I got a box of crayons I just found. We can color. So, what I'm going to talk to you about is how to write your first short story. And I know, and you know, that you're ready to be part of the magic that allows the minds of your readers to escape their current reality, and boy, oh boy, is the current reality something else. And to relax and escape into a new world, the world you created, the world I created. Now, this one's full of demons and whatnot. So how do you do it? How do you become part of someone's imagination? How do you help someone expand their mind with the words on the page? You just use AI. Yeah, that's fun. Just use AI. That's fun. Okay, so everyone loves. So, like I was saying before the battery died, like I said, I'm sort of recording and testing this new camera and microphone at the same time. So, like I said, Everyone loves a good story, right? Whether it's a thrilling mystery, a heartwarming romance, or a spine-tingling horror tale. Stories have the power to transport us, even for only a short time. And that's the beauty of short stories. People can read them if they don't have a lot of time. If they don't have time to finish a novel, maybe they've got time to finish a 10-page short story, or 20 pages, or 50 pages. Maybe they can read that and, be immersed in that world for a few minutes. It's like a short story is like a spark. It sparks someone's imagination. And anyone can write a short story. Anyone can write a short story. So if you think that you want to write a short story, you can absolutely do it. So let's take a look at how. First of all, you need to have a short story idea. Okay? Every great short story begins with an idea that makes you curious, excited, or maybe even a little bit nervous. Maybe you're going to explore something new. You don't know anything about this topic, so you're going to write a short story about the topic so that you can learn something about it yourself. And a lot of people do that. They'll write a story or something on a topic that interests them, that so they can learn something too, and then the readers can escape and the author learns something, and it's really a win-win situation. So you can ask yourself what if questions. One of the simplest ways to generate ideas is by asking, what if? What if a person woke up in the morning and realized that no one could see or hear them? What if they became the new invisible person? What if I didn't hit random buttons on the computer? What if two people swapped lives? There's been a lot of stories and movies on people who swap lives, or suddenly their life changes dramatically. Like I keep getting advertisements to watch from like 17 to 30 or 30 to 17 or 17 again, whatever that is. I'm not interested in that, but it just shows you how prevalent the topic is. What if you could go back in time and be 17 again, or 15, or 10? What would your character do differently that they didn't do before? What if a letter arrived in the mail and it was written by someone who'd been dead several years and the postmark was 3 days ago? What about that one? So anything can become a story. So once you figure out your idea, think about your own personal experiences. Think about a moment in your life that was exciting or overly emotional or just plain strange. Have you ever walked down the street and been like, shouldn't, or driven down the street, you're like, I think I'll take a different way home. And then you get home and you see on the news that there was a nasty car accident on that street that you didn't turn down. What if those types of things kept happening to your character? What would they do? What would they think? Would people believe them when they were like, don't do it, man, don't do it? Except, it wasn't something obviously like crazy or dangerous. It was like, dude, you should take a different route home today. Or you shouldn't use that pen. And, maybe the character uses the pen. Anyway, I actually had this happen to me the other day. I found a pen in my pen box, and I opened it, and I started doing stuff. Well, it turns out the pen was leaking. And I could have gotten it all over my hands, but I actually had gloves on. So I didn't get any ink on my hands, but I got it all over everything else. Because, you touch things. But, what if that was something like your character is exploring themselves, and they tell their coworker, hey man, I don't think you should use that pen today. And they use the pen and they get ink all over themselves. It's just an inky mess. They got to go home and changed their suit and everything. And the guy comes back later and he's like, hey man, you were right. I shouldn't have used that pen. All right, so, use your personal experiences. They always say, write what you know. Well, what do you know? What do you know? I know writing. I know flying airplanes. I know being an author. I know being in retail. But how do you turn those kinds of things into a story? Just think about that. Think about turning a moment in time in your life into a story, and think about how you would do it. Number 3, you can also take your inspiration from art, music, or headlines. In fact, I was doing something the other day, and I'll show it to you. It's on my phone. It's on my phone somewhere. Okay, I was thinking about, after I exploded the pen, I was thinking about, writers and what interests writers, and it's papers and pens. And I thought, well, what would happen, what would a writer trap look like? How would you trap a writer? And so this is what I came up with. Basically, it's like a little box trap, mouse trap thing. If the writer were to grab the pen, the thing would unhook and get the writer's hand, and then they would be attached to the box. But, think about that, how to trap a writer. That could be a good thing. So, and there's my little art. Now, I had an idea, and I turned it into art, and it could later become a story. But you can also look at art and music and even news headlines, something like news headlines, and come up with an idea. Look at random photographs. What was the story behind that photograph? Listen to a song and write a story about the mood of the song. Or read a news headline and think about a fictional twist. Or, recreate it based on what you read in the news article. As you revise it, it'll be nothing like the thing you looked at. It'll be a unique thing, but think about that. You can always do that. Now, you can also use writing prompts. I do writing prompts in my shorts, my short videos, just about every day. So if you need a writing prompt, go look back through my shorts. There's all kinds of writing prompts. I've been doing a lot of pirate writing prompts and treasure hunt writing prompts lately. But there's some romance, there's some thriller, there's some horror. There's all of that. So, if you're still stuck, here's a few more writing prompts. Imagine if a stranger sits next to you on a park bench and whispers, "You're in danger, but I can't explain to you why." What's going to go through your character's head? Is he going to negotiate something with that stranger where they can go someplace more private and the dude can actually tell him something, or does he slip your main character a piece of paper explaining it? What would you do in that situation? Write it down. Okay? And try this. A child discovers an old key buried in a backyard. Now, it doesn't have to be a child. It can be a teenager, an adult. It can even be your dog can dig up a key and bring it to you. So where does the key go to? Imagine that. What is about that key? Have you ever seen, and you may have come across this too, have you ever gotten a skeleton key from an old house, and wondered what the history is to that key? It's pretty interesting. So, and here you go. On your 30th birthday, if you're 30, you receive a letter written by you at a different age. Now, is this you from the future or you from the past? You decide. Now, here's one. Every night you have the same dream until it changes. Why did it change? Was it real? Was it fiction? Why did your dream change? Think about that and write about it. And the last one, your main character gets a phone call from an unknown number, and they happen to answer it and not believe that it was a scam. And the other voice on the other end says, I need you to remember. What is your character going to do? Remember what? Remember what? Is it important? Is it not important? Write about that. So, remember to write about these things. Because that's all writing a short story is. It's just writing down an idea. You start somewhere with an idea, and then you write it down. It becomes much, much longer. Ugh, I need a new printer. I have blank pages in the middle of my stuff. All right. So, to help you, you might want to create a basic outline, right? Before you start writing, having a simple outline can help keep your story focused and engaged. A short story doesn't need a complicated structure, just a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. So what you're going to do in your short story is you're going to introduce everybody. You're going to introduce your main character. You're going to introduce the plot. And things are slowly going to gain steam until you reach the climax or the pinnacle of all of the action or thought or turmoil or conflict. Then, after that, everything will slowly resolve and wind down until the problem is solved. All right? So that's how it is. And we'll take it in detail here. The first thing you want to do is define your main character. Think about who is your main character. What do they want or need? What makes them interesting or unique? And what is their biggest fear, flaw, or challenge? Writing down those few things can help you get an idea of who your main character is. An example would be, Maria, a shy bookstore owner, wants to write her own novel, but is too afraid of failure to start. So how does Maria get over her failure? And honestly, if you're trying to, over her fear of failure, and if you are trying to write a novel, think about how are you going to get over your fear of failure? How would you do it? Now, number 2, establish a central conflict. What's the conflict? Is it internal? Like your character's going through something emotionally or mentally? Or is it external? Someone is hunting your character. Your character needs to do something or find something. What's the problem? Or is it a combination of both? Sometimes it's a combination of both, but normally intermediate or advanced writers would do both, and they would make it into a novel. And then, think about how does going through this conflict cause your character to change? How is your character going to change through this? And you can just brainstorm ideas on this, because as you go through your story, your character will change. And it'll be gradual. You won't even notice it until you get to the end. And then you'll be like, wow, my character went from this to this. That's amazing. So, all right. Now 3, structure your story. A short story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Make sure you got the beginning, the middle, and the end. Number 4, keep your outline simple and flexible. If you make a rigid outline, you won't give yourself room to grow. And here's the deal. Every time I've ever made an outline, it was done by the time I got done with the first paragraph. Because the characters zigged when I thought they were going to zag. Right? So always keep your outline flexible. Right? In broad terms, like I'm going to introduce the character. They're going to do this, this, and this. In the middle of the story, they're going to fight with so-and-so. And sometimes that'll change. Your character will fight with somebody else. But keep it flexible and don't be very rigid with your outline. Give it room to breathe and grow and change. Now you need to write your first draft. So you've got your characters, you've got your conflict, you've got your plot, you've written down a little bit about everything. Don't make it more than a couple of pages if you're going to do this pre-writing. Just a couple of pages, like two pages. And you don't have to double space it, but 2 pages. 2 pages. Single-sided. If you're working on a paper like this, single-sided 2 pages. I know how you guys think. I know. Cram it all in there. It's like the guy that writes down all the notes on like 10 different pieces of paper and then takes it over to the copy machine and shrinks it down and shrinks it down and shrinks it down until like they have a whole novel on an 8x11 piece of paper. I know how you think. All right. So you're going to write your first draft, right? Start with a strong hook. And I'll go ahead and this is the Tazumari Greed statue is what this is, but I'm gonna read you my first line. My first line isn't really like a sentence. It's gimme, gimme, greedy, greedy. Gimme, gimme, greedy, greedy. It's pretty relevant to today's society. It might make you want to read more, but there's my hook. You know right away that I am talking about greed right here. And then I go on to bring it to my narrator who says, if you hear those words in the back of your mind, slapping out from under those deeply grooved all-season rubber tires, hammered into that board that's being nailed to a roof, growled through that car engine as it speeds down that dark highway, or howled on the wind during a violent storm, you should probably run. Troubles are coming, folks. That's what I've said here. Very long-winded, but novels usually are. It's a long-winded way to say, if you're a greedy SOB, trouble is a-coming. Grab your reader. Grab your reader with a strong first sentence and a strong first paragraph. And they'll keep reading. So then, an intriguing statement like I did, gimme, gimme, greedy, greedy. That's an intriguing statement. Or a surprising fact. Now, you can also put surprising facts in your story. Like the house had been empty for 30 years, but the front door was unlocked. And there was a fresh cut vase of flowers in the foyer. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. And you can do a question. Why was there a letter from my future self in the mailbox? Did I come back in time? How did I mail the letter backwards? Think about that. And you want to introduce everybody, but you want to start your story as close to the initial action as possible. So you don't want to, I'll give a cliched kind of example. This was too tight. So I'll give a cliched example. Let's say your character is a police officer. We're going to do a police officer in this example. And Detective Jones, his alarm clock goes off. Meh, meh, meh. Right? His alarm clock goes off. And he rolls over and he looks at it, and it's 5:55. He hits the snooze button. He's got it on 5:55 because he has to get up at 6. But he knows he's going to hit the snooze button. If you put that in there in your story, it might be pretty interesting. So the alarm goes off 5 minutes later. Detective Jones rolls over, looks at the clock. It says 6 a.m. and 35 seconds. He can hear the automatic coffee maker, the programmable coffee maker. It's going off. coffee is ready. So he's highly motivated by coffee, so he gets up out of bed. And he stumbles his way downstairs and gets a cup of coffee. Then he sits down at the table and he starts reading the news headlines. At this point, folks, if you're going to wake your character up, those news headlines better be pretty good. Like, on 25th Street, there was a quadruple homicide and an arson. And your detective jumps up 25th Street. 25th Street, what address? My mother, brother's son, sister's brother, mother's cousin lives there. All right, right? So now you've got your character. He didn't want to get out of bed. He got out of bed. He got his coffee. Now he realized that somebody didn't call him about his mother's brother, sister's second cousin's son being offed in a house down the road, and the house was burned. So now all of a sudden your character's, you got to get there. Now that you can do, but if you have your character sit there and, lazily read the newspaper, somebody found some kittens, they're mowing the grass outside. They're going to be cleaning the roads next week. Don't park on the street. It's a parade. And he's slowly sipping his coffee. And nothing else is going on. You can write all that down, but you better lop it off and get rid of it. Until your guy is like in his car going to the station because he just got a call. Keep as close to the action as you possibly can. Okay, so number 2 here. Write it down fast and edit it later. Here's the deal. You want to go when you're writing. You just want to get your pen, and I happen to have a red one here, and you just want to go. Get it written down. Don't stop to do nothing. Don't edit. Don't correct your spelling. Don't do nothing. Just get it down. Because what you want is a draft that you can work with, right? Once you have your first draft, you have something you can work with. I accidentally hit my keyboard again. And here's the deal. On your first draft, your scenes might be pretty short. They should all move the story forward, but they're probably going to be pretty short. When I do mine, it's really just dialogue and action and movement and stuff like that. And I put in descriptions and things like that later. But you only need description on things that are important. If the chair is not important, do not describe it. If the pen is important, do describe it. This one's almost out of ink. Try and use active voice and strong verbs. Try and stay out of passive voice as much as you can. Bob ran down the hallway. The hallway vibrated as Bob ran down it. Which one of those is active and which one of those is passive? Think about that. Write authentic dialogue. Think about how you talk. Do you always talk in complete sentences? I doubt it, and neither should your characters. But you don't have to put in like, well, I think, don't do that. Don't do that unless it's really, really important that they show some sort of delayed speech thing. All right, do not worry about your word count. Just write down your story. Don't worry about the word count. The truth is your story will be as long as your story will be. There isn't much messing with the word count. There are ways to make it longer, add more description. There are ways to make it shorter, cut the description and the slow scenes. But in general, the word count is the word count. And then end your story accurately according to your story. It does not have to be a happy ending. It does not have to be a sad ending. But it has to be an ending that is true to the story. Okay? If you're not talking about unicorns, a unicorn Pegasus cannot swoop down and carry your characters away, right? An ending should answer the conflict or the question that you posed in the beginning. If you want to leave your readers thinking, you can do that. And that also opens it up to, well, maybe you want to do another short story on this topic and expand. Or you want to do another story with these characters. Or you want to continue the story in another story. You can do it. I do it all the time. So, once you get your first draft done, you're going to want to edit and revise. But you may want to take a break. It depends. If, you've been working on it for 6 weeks and this is your front page, you've forgotten what's here. So you can go ahead and scroll back up to the top. But if you slammed it out in a week or a couple of days, you need to give yourself a rest to forget what you wrote. That's the goal before you start editing. You need to forget what you wrote so that you can look at it with fresh eyes. And if you want to, you can read it out loud. I do all of my books and stories and things like that. They go on audio. So as I'm doing the audio for the story, I'll back it up if I hit a rough patch and I'll edit it. So I do my audio and my final edit at the same time. And you want to always start with big picture edits. You want to look for things that are missing. You want to make sure you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. You want to make sure that the goal and the conflict are clear. You want to make sure that each scene moves the story forward. And you want to make sure that you have the right pacing. Does the story feel rushed or slow? You can adjust these things. You can adjust all of it. And those are the big picture edits. You're not so much worried about grammar or sentence structure or things like that. You want to make sure your story makes sense and that it flows right and that it does what it is supposed to do, which is tell the story from the beginning to the end. From the beginning to the end. Now, once you get done with your big picture edits, you want to do your line edits. And this is where you start looking at your sentences. Cut your unnecessary words. Like, for example, she was extremely tired after a very long and exhausting day. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. It's grammatically correct. Okay? Nothing wrong with it. It's got a subject and a verb and a predicate. Nothing wrong with it. But if you're looking to write tight or make it more concise, you can write, she was exhausted after a long day. And the second one is probably what I would write, unless I'm going to elaborate on the why. If I'm going to elaborate on why she's very tired and exhausted after a long day, then I'm going to leave the longer sentence in because I'm going to elaborate on that. If I'm just moving on to getting this character to bed, she was exhausted after a long day, she stripped her clothes off, took a shower, and collapsed into bed. That's what I'm writing. Okay? So, there's some context for you. Use strong verbs when you can. So you've got, he walked quickly to the door. Walk quickly is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But a more concise way to do it, and a more accurate way to write that would be, he rushed to the door. Zoom. I don't really like the word rushed, but yeah, it's a good example. Also, look for cliches. I'm leaning on my leg, that's why I look crooked. Avoid cliches. Try fresh original descriptions again, unless you are literally writing a comedy book and you want to use as many cliches as possible. Try to avoid things like, her heart pounded like a drum. Or my favorite, her long, flowing blonde hair fluttered in the ocean breeze. Please do not write that either. I am so tired of reading that. There for a while, every story I wrote had somewhere within the first 10 pages her long, flowing blonde hair. No, don't do it. And then let's say you wanted to not do the pound like a drum, you might say hammered against her ribs. That would be good if you had a horror story. Because you got the hammering and the ribs. Kind of reminds me of pork ribs. That would be good for a horror story. That line would be excellent for a horror story. Okay, then you want to polish your dialogue. Make sure your dialogue sounds natural and true to the characters. Then you're going to proofread for grammar, spelling, and formatting. Okay, that's your proofreading step. This is where you get into the minute details. Grammar, spelling, formatting. And if you want, you can get feedback from others. And you can take their feedback to further refine your story. And always, after you get done with it, read it one more time. Sometimes you'll catch stuff right at the end. I know my favorite way to catch stuff is to publish it and then read it. You'll catch all kinds of mistakes like that. So, there you go, folks. Once you get it done, of course, you can decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to publish it on your website? Do you want to publish it on your social media? Do you want to include it? Do you want to do a lot of stories and make a book of short stories and like publish it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo? Think about what you want to do to it. If you're new, you might just publish it on your website or on your social media account. That's what you can do with it. So anyway, once you finish your story, pat yourself on the back. You finished a story. And you can publish it anywhere. You can publish it on your website, social media. You can make a whole book of short stories. It's really up to you. But writing a short story is a great way to get started in writing fiction. So anyway, folks, that is how to write your first short story. I hope you found it informative and enlightening. The article is also on the website. I will put a link in the description if you want to go read the article that goes along with this video. Other than that, folks, have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you later. If you want to support the channel, there are GoFundMe and Buy Me a Coffee links in the description. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day.